You've probably heard the term metagame used at some point when people discuss games and their design. The term's been used interchangeably depending on the genre lately. Often it's used to describe the process of finding fun outside of the game itself, such as creating tier lists, or finding a fun or amusing gameplay mechanic or loop within the game itself that's not part of the primary core experience, yet substantial enough to be just as good or even replace it. In some instances, games which would have normally been regarded as being quite basic or having an average experience have been raised to a higher level due to a strong metagame that players have discovered. Now this isn't really a new concept or idea, but it has gone through some name changes over time when it comes to trying to accurately define what it is as a player we're experiencing, or as game designers trying to create through deliberate, or often accidental means. You might be more familiar with the term replay value or subgame. So let me now give you a few examples of what I mean when I say metagame in this video. When Pokemon Go was first released in 2016, you might remember it was quite a limited experience. Aside from wandering around trying to catch Pokemon and complete the Pokédex, there really wasn't much else to do. But a metagame quickly developed when people discovered that much like the handheld counterparts, each Pokemon had individual values, changing the goal of the game from gotta catch 'em all to gotta catch the best IVs. Another potential example of a metagame which falls more into line with what I'm going to be talking about in this video is found in Yakuza 0 through the Cabaret Club's sub-story missions. What at first appears to be a simple minigame of micromanaging each paying customer to an appropriate hostess becomes a simplified yet highly engaging business management simulator. Each hostess that works for you levels up, learning how to serve customers better. Some need time off after busy shifts, as well as managing difficult customers and responding to their complaints and praises. As you play through the main storyline when you wander around the town, you can find businesses which you can invest in, and in return they will advertise your club. This raises the popularity of your club and then attracts wealthier clients who'll come and spend even more money. But if your club gets too popular, rival clubs will challenge you and you have to defeat them in order to maintain your influence share. To stay ahead of the competition, you can wander around the town and recruit other girls to work in your club, train them, buy them outfits, and even do their makeup to change their appeal to the various customers that you'll get. Some of the girls even have their own side missions where you can learn about their family and issues that they're facing outside of the workplace. Completing these earns you rewards, not just for your club, but also for the main game itself. And whilst there is an ending to this sub-quest, you can still continue to run the Cabaret Club, constantly tweaking and changing the appearance of each of the hostesses, and creating teams of staff to get the most money out of your customers. What started off as a crime conspiracy adventure game is now a highly entertaining and addictive Hostess Club RPG. The entire Hostess Club minigame is completely optional, but players are subtly encouraged to participate in it due to the money that they'll make from the business being put directly into their main game account balance, and items gained through rewards can also be used in the main game. Players can also create effectively staff lists or recipes for each of the hostesses in order to reach their maximum potential. Tier lists if you like, similar to a fighting game. It's not a contained metagame experience. So now that you kind of have an idea as to what it is I'm thinking about, when it comes to Sonic the Hedgehog, does it have a metagame, and is it any good? The most obvious example of a Sonic metagame experience is through the use of time attack mode, or the belief that you should get faster as you replay the stages over again. Learning where to use each of Sonic's skills, which in turn change the stance of look how fast and amazing Sonic is to look how fast and amazing I am. This has more or less remained in every Sonic game since the very first one. There's almost always a time attack mode or some way to judge and record the player's progress based on time. It's a very simple way to encourage both replay value and to create a competitive metagame experience between different players, with players asking, can you beat my time? In the 90s, this competitive metagame was actually encouraged by magazines, who would often print high scores or fastest lap times around certain courses, or in this case of Sonic, how quickly their readers could get through specific zones. Today, we have online communities such as YouTube and Twitter and even Reddit sharing incredible speedruns and feats in various video games, all the time asking the question, can you go faster? And with the advent of online video sharing and recordings, some people actually replay various stages that they may not have considered, just to see if they can emulate the tricks that someone more skillful has done. But is this metagame experience actually fun? And I think I know how you're going to react to this, but I'd say it's not.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Perfectly disgraceful. The man ought to be prosecuted.
This kind of meta gameplay has a problem which directly relates to the quality of the overall game itself. If the game isn't very good, like say has issues with controls, physics problems, or is just poorly designed levels and stages, why would players want to repeat those stages over and over again? Unlike other metagame qualities, the time attack aspect requires a strong core game, otherwise only the most dedicated of speedrunners are even going to bother with this. I don't think it's any stretch to say that the time attack metagame for Sonic Mania is probably stronger than that of Sonic Forces, or comparing the speedrunning community in Sonic Generations to that of Sonic Boom Rise of Lyric, although thanks to Knuckles, that's quite impressive. So I'm running the risk here of moving completely into a level design discussion, which I don't want to do right now. Whilst I'd love to do that, I'll only do it if there's enough demand, so please let me know in the comments if you'd like me to look at Sonic level design. But for those games which are actually critically acclaimed, like say Sonic Mania, I have to ask, and please be honest with yourself here, how many of us actually seriously bother with the time attack mode outside of a couple of attempts, on multiple stages, on every stage in the game, with every character? I have a feeling that unless you're part of a dedicated speedrunning community, or are a streamer that kind of makes a living off it, the number of people that actually do this isn't very high. So does Sonic have any other kind of metagame? Not that I can see. Time attack is pretty much all there is. So with that in mind, what could Sonic games actually do to include a form of metagame that could lift the end user experience even if the core game is a bit average, which could potentially also extend the life of the game itself? Well, this is the thing, Sonic games actually used to have a major metagame experience, which means I now have to talk about something I don't particularly enjoy. Ladies and gentlemen, the Chao Garden. So I have a feeling I know how you're going to react when I say this. I don't like Chao.
You ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Perfectly disgraceful. The man ought to be prosecuted.
The thing is though, on paper, I think they're a really good idea, but the execution in the adventure games is pretty poor. Chao Gardens and Chao Raising demands a lot of grinding, and in some cases you are literally just sat waiting, doing nothing. The number of times you have to replay a stage just to collect the correct animals for your Chao is also far too high for it to be enjoyable, only to then sit in the Chao Garden waiting for what feels like an eternity to get your Chao to evolve. While Sonic Adventure 2 did indeed improve on the Chao raising experience, so it became almost a form of pet raising RPG, it's still very much a grind and very limiting to what you can actually do when you've fully raised your Chao. But that said, a lot of people really like it, and even I have to admit, there is a game here that I would probably really enjoy myself. Aside from the whole virtual pet raising and taking part in the Chao racing experience, some people have gone so deeply into this minigame that it's now almost a huge game in itself. It's a true metagame experience. People have provided formulas in order to create the best Chao for specific courses. There's instructions and formulas on how to create Chaos that look like Sonic, Shadow, and even Knights. This has grown beyond what was just an attempt to jump on the 90s virtual pet bandwagon. The main issue with it is just how grindy it is, and what impact the Chao actually has on the main game when you're finished with it. And this can be a bit of a problem, because the Chao Gardens in the adventure games are quite limited in a single player experience, and for most people, trying to spend all that time and all that effort just to get the Chao to finish 5 races, just so they can get that final unlock, is not worth it. And this becomes very evident when you look at another game that did Chao Gardens slightly better in terms of direct implications on the main game. And that game was Sonic Chronicles.
Boo this fan!
Oh, now stop booing. I said impact the main game, not that it was a good metagame experience. You see, what Chronicles does, which is better than Sonic Adventure, is that it gives you the ability to equip Chao and use their abilities in combat. This in turn allowed players to experiment with different Chao depending on the combat situation. There was a clear reason to search for Chao and use the garden and invest time in it, as it benefited the player in the core main game directly. To further add to this, you can even trade your Chao with other people, which increases its level, that also further improves its abilities. There was even further potential for a metagame experience, as so-called viral Chao were to be released at special events. However, this didn't quite go to plan, and they were later released as cheat codes. In Japan only. So how could you take the Chao Garden idea and make it both a better sub-game, as well as a better metagame experience? The Sonic Adventure 2 Chao Garden is a pretty good foundation to start with. Aside from the actual garden itself where you feed and grow the Chao, it actually also has the kindergarten, the doctor, and the black market seller. Literally the building blocks for any starter town in an RPG. The first step would be to give the player more feedback on everything. How long an evolution will take, how long an egg will take to hatch, as well as a more visual XP system, which gives the player an indication as to how many specific items would be needed to raise a certain stat level. Races should also return, but aside from the typical selection, there should be more specialised courses based on a Chao's abilities, such as flying, climbing, and swimming. Not just the small handful which we received in the previous games. I think the Doctor should also be modified slightly. He can advise you on how to raise specific character Chao. Heck, you could even probably unlock some of these recipes from the game itself, instead of just going in blindly experimenting. The kindergarten, as before, should teach your Chao special abilities, but instead of it being a random one, you should have some control or some say in what lesson your Chao learned, and whatever it learns as an ability can help you in the main game. I'll explain this in just a moment. So, I've basically just described improving a side activity. How could this improve the metagame as well as impact the main game itself? The obvious step is to take the Chronicles approach. Let the playable characters equip Chao as a form of item or enhancement that directly affects their chosen playable character's ability. I mean, think about it. Imagine a player spends time raising a specific Chao and then equipping it so that the playable character could grant them special abilities. For example, imagine a Sonic-themed Chao that could increase a player's top speed, or a Knuckles-themed Chao that could cause bosses to take more damage. You can use your imagination here for other possibilities, but aside from the bonuses to specific character Chao, the black market seller also sells masks and hats. So why not also clothing items that not only affect the Chao's own stats, but also have perks to the playable character itself? This would then allow players not just to create a sense of fashion Chao, but also create a metagame system where players can make different builds of Chao, which would not only affect their own abilities in races and Chao PvP events, but also directly to the main game's single solo experience too. The Dreamcast VMU allowed people to play a small Chao adventure game. When completed, their Chao would gain abilities and some items for the main game. If Sega really wanted to make a larger metagame experience, why not do something similar but as a phone companion app? You could even fully modernise the experience to be similar to that of Pokemon Go, where alongside an offline adventure mode, you could actually walk out and around with your Chao, and they'll gain additional stat benefits depending on how far you've walked or what you've actually done in your real life experience. But if Chao Gardens are not your thing, and to be honest, they're not really my thing, in Sonic Unleashed, Sega included a rudimentary RPG experience system tied to the Werehog and Sonic. Why not have a similar system, but instead of their abilities being maxed out upon hitting a certain numeric value, the player can only specify a limited number of experience to each stat. The metagame here would allow players to create different builds of Sonic. 3D games have also given the player items which allow Sonic to perform new moves, but what if there was an in-game store for Sonic, like a sports shop or Tails' workshop, where you could buy and equip different shoes or other items which affect Sonic stats, potentially creating a wide variety of different Sonic builds, all of which could have different benefits and advantages depending on the stage you play. Or if we really wanted to think outside of the box, imagine a form of in-game robot wars, in which the player could build a Badnik, using collected parts from defeated enemies and bosses. I could easily see players calling themselves mechanics and coming up with new Badnik builds for combat. It'd be quite a fun metagame experience.
So those were just a few ideas. Now, don't get me wrong, including a metagame or activities for the player to do outside of the primary reason to pick up and play a Sonic game won't suddenly fix all the problems associated with recent modern titles, but I'd be willing to bet that people would play said games for longer or even raise their opinion of such titles if players were able to find a fun meta activity which wasn't just trying to beat each other's time. And we nearly got such a meta activity in Sonic Forces with the use of the customizable avatar, only that character customization mode is purely visual. It lacks the ability to create any character that is truly unique that has a direct impact on the gameplay, other than the default abilities based on what species you pick. Now don't get me wrong, I agree that time attack and challenging friends to beat your time can be fun if the stages are ones that you truly enjoy, at least for the initial few exchanges. But even for those critically acclaimed titles, for the majority of players, time attack quickly starts to feel frustrating, or akin to taking the game not as a fun and exciting hobby, but to that of a repetitive job.
And even when you do beat it, whilst you have that euphoric moment, you kind of think, why did I just do that? But those are just my thoughts, and if you liked this and would like to hear my thoughts on other aspects of Sonic's game design, please let me know. Level design, artificial intelligence, and various gameplay mechanics would probably also make for another interesting discussion. Please let me know if you'd like to hear my thoughts on these in the comments. So what about you? Would you like to see the Chao Gardens come back with a more metagame experience? Or even a Badnik style Robot Wars mechanic? Or if you have some completely different ideas yourself, please let me know in the comments, I'd love to read them. See you next time!
The man ought to be prosecuted.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed this discussion about Sonic's metagame experience and how we can potentially improve it, please click that like button. And if you'd like to continue the adventures and see what else I've got in store, please click the subscribe button and bell notification button. The videos I produce just wouldn't be possible without the incredible support from my Patreons and Coffee donators. Each donator receives a video credit, and Patreon supporters also receive early access to upcoming videos. So if you like the sound of that and would like to join in that party, please see the video links in the description. Otherwise, please share my video content on Facebook, Twitter, and Reddit. And don't forget to continue the adventures by following me on Twitter. But most of all, just thank you for taking the time out to enjoy the content I produce. It really does mean the world to me. Thank you.